I canceled my wedding 2 hours before the ceremony when I discovered my fiancée's dark secret. So I, 32, was engaged to Ashley, 29F, for 2 years. We met through mutual friends in Denver where we both work. I'm a software engineer and she's an occupational therapist at a children's hospital. From our first date, she seemed perfect, beautiful, smart, funny, and had this genuine passion for helping kids that made me admire her even more. After 6 months together, she moved into my apartment and everything felt like a fairy tale. Ashley was always a little private about her past. She grew up in a small town in Oregon whose name I could never remember, and her parents died in a car crash when she was 22. No siblings, few childhood friends still in touch, and she always changed the subject when I asked about her life before we met. It struck me as odd at first, but I respected it. Everyone has trauma, right? What really stood out was how she handled technology. For someone our age, Ashley was almost digitally Amish. No social media, used an old iPhone with no Touch ID, and always paid for everything in cash. She said she wanted a more authentic life away from screens. As a tech guy, I found it refreshing to have a girlfriend who wasn't glued to her phone. During our relationship, small things bugged me, but I always rationalized them. She never let me visit her at work, claiming the hospital had strict policies. When I suggested a trip to Oregon to see where she grew up, she'd get visibly uncomfortable and make up excuses. One time, I found an old driver's license in her drawer. The photo was definitely her, but the name was smudged and the address illegible. When I asked about it, she said it got damaged in a laundry mishap and laughed it off. The proposal came last December, at the top of a mountain during one of our hikes. She cried, said yes, and everything felt perfect. We started planning a small wedding for May, just close family and friends. Since she had no family, it was mostly my side and a few of her co-workers. This is where things started to get really weird. 2 weeks ago, I was organizing paperwork for our honeymoon in Mexico when I realized we needed to update our passports. Ashley had always said hers was expired and she needed to renew it, but every time I offered help or asked about it, she said she was taking care of it. When I finally insisted on checking the documents together, she admitted she'd never actually had a passport. That seemed impossible. She had told me about a trip to Europe during college and mentioned visiting Canada with her parents as a child. When I confronted her about the inconsistencies, she got defensive and said she must have mixed up stories. Maybe they were dreams or just plans that never happened. Red flag number 1. Last week, we went to the county office to get our marriage license. Ashley was visibly anxious on the way, saying she hated bureaucracy and that those places made her nervous. At the office, when she handed over her documents, the clerk frowned and said he needed to check something in the system. We waited for almost an hour, and Ashley was sweating, constantly fidgeting with her hair, a nervous tic I'd never seen before. Eventually, the clerk returned and said there was a minor discrepancy, but it could be resolved. We got the license, but something in his tone made me uneasy. I tried asking Ashley about it in the car, but she brushed it off, saying it was probably just the clerk being paranoid and that these things happen all the time. Red flag number 2. The wedding day was yesterday, Saturday. I woke up at 6 a.m. in the hotel. Ashley insisted we not sleep together the night before for superstitious reasons. I called her like we'd agreed, but it went straight to voicemail. Weird, since she always picked up. I texted her. No response. By 8 a.m., I was genuinely worried. I drove to her apartment. Yes, we still kept separate places, another of her quirks. I used my key to get in and found her in the shower. When I called her name, she stepped out with a look of pure panic, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. I told her I was worried since she wasn't answering. She apologized, said she was just nervous about the wedding and had her phone on silent. Made sense, so I let it go. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. While she was getting ready, I went to the kitchen to make us coffee. Her apartment had always been impeccably organized, obsessively clean. But that morning, there was a stack of papers on the kitchen table I'd never seen before. Normally, I'm not nosy, but something about the way the papers were scattered caught my eye. On top was an official-looking document from the U.S. Department of Justice. My blood ran cold when I read the words, Witness Protection Program, in bold. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was a letter addressed to Jennifer Walsh, not Ashley Mitchell, the name I knew, dated 3 weeks ago. The letter talked about final relocation and termination of program following successful 5-year participation. There were mentions of permanent new identity and release for long-term relationships. I couldn't process what I was reading. My fiancée, the woman I was about to marry in 6 hours, was in the witness protection program. She had been an entirely different person our whole relationship. I kept flipping through the papers with shaky fingers. Legal documents about the name change, a medical history for Jennifer Walsh, and, this is where my world truly collapsed, newspaper clippings about a criminal case in Portland. The headlines were disturbing. Key witness helps convict crime organization. Young nurse exposes human trafficking ring in hospital. Oregon gang sentenced thanks to courageous employee. The photo in the article was undeniably Ashley, 5 years younger and with darker hair. The article detailed how Jennifer Walsh, a 24-year-old pediatric nurse, had discovered her hospital was being used as a front for a human trafficking ring. Apparently, children were being smuggled in, given fake medical treatments while awaiting transfer. Ashley, Jennifer, had gathered evidence for months before handing it to the FBI. The article went on to explain that her life had been threatened after she testified against the organization, which had ties to Mexican cartels. Several members got life sentences, but there were suspicions that others were still free and seeking revenge. I was reading about the woman I loved as if she were a complete stranger. But what truly crushed me was what I found at the bottom of the pile: a recent psychological evaluation discussing challenges in maintaining intimate relationships while protecting identity in the program. The therapist noted, the patient shows genuine emotional attachment to current romantic partner, but struggles with guilt over necessary deception. Ashley walked into the kitchen just then, wearing the robe I gave her last Christmas. When she saw the papers in my hands, her face changed instantly. She wasn't the sweet, slightly shy woman I knew. There was something harder in her eyes, a survivor's resolve. We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, she asked softly, "How much did you read?" I told her enough. I asked if anything about her was real, her name, her past, her feelings for me. She sat down and began to cry. Not a gentle cry, but a deep, gut-wrenching sob. She told me everything. That her real name was Jennifer Walsh. That she had been a pediatric nurse in Portland. That she discovered the trafficking scheme by accident when she noticed inconsistencies in medical records. That she spent months gathering proof, knowing she was risking her life. That everything fell apart the moment she decided to do the right thing and turn in the evidence. The FBI placed her in the Witness Protection Program after receiving credible death threats. She had lived 5 years as Ashley Mitchell, always looking over her shoulder, always knowing that one day it could all come crashing down. The part that hurt most was when she admitted she originally approached me because I seemed safe. A tech nerd with a predictable life who wouldn't ask too many questions. But then she genuinely fell in love, and it complicated everything. 3 weeks ago, she was officially released from the program. The criminal network had been fully dismantled. She was finally free to live a normal life. But normal meant confronting 5 years of lies told to the man she loved. She planned to tell me the truth after the wedding, during our honeymoon. She hoped to reveal it gradually, trusting that our love would be strong enough to withstand the foundation of lies. I listened to all of this while sitting in her kitchen, half-dressed in my tuxedo, while 150 guests were probably already on their way to the church. I couldn't process my emotions. Anger at being deceived for 2 years, sadness over the trauma she had endured, fear that maybe our entire relationship was a lie, and, strangely, pride for her courage, for doing the right thing at great personal cost. But most of all, I felt betrayed. Not by Jennifer, the whistleblower, but by Ashley, who chose to build our relationship on deceit. I get that she was protecting herself, but marriage is supposed to be about total trust. How could I say "I do," knowing our entire life together started with a lie? I asked her if she really loved me or if I was just convenient, a perfect cover. She swore her feelings were real, that falling in love with me was the most authentic thing she had experienced in 5 years. But how could I know for sure? How could I separate Jennifer from the persona she'd built? By 10 a.m., 2 hours before the ceremony, I told her I couldn't go through with it. Not that day. Not like this. I needed time to figure out who she really was. Jennifer, Ashley, or some mix of both. The look on her face was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. Not just sadness, resignation, as if she always knew this moment would come. She said she understood, that she knew she was being unfair but didn't know how else to protect herself. We had to cancel everything. Awkward phone calls to relatives, vague explanations to friends, returning gifts. I made up an excuse about last-minute issues I couldn't explain. No one asked too many questions. I think they sensed something serious had happened. Ashley, I still don't know what to call her, packed her things and said she was staying with a friend for a while. Before she left, she gave me a sealed letter and told me to read it when I was ready. I haven't opened it yet. Now I'm sitting alone in the apartment we shared, surrounded by unopened wedding gifts and wilting flowers. My family and friends are giving me space, but I can see the concern in their eyes. They want to help, but how do you explain that your fiancé was actually a hero who saved innocent children's lives, but lied about her identity for your entire relationship? The most confusing part is that I'm proud of her. What Jennifer did was incredibly brave. She gave up everything to protect vulnerable kids. That's the kind of person I wish I could be. But Ashley chose to deceive me for 2 years, and that hurts in a way I can't put into words. I keep wondering, how much of our relationship was real? When she said she loved me, was that Jennifer or the Ashley persona? Were the tears during our proposal joy or guilt? Every time she dodged questions about her past, was she protecting herself or choosing to lie? And the question that haunts me the most, if she had told me the truth from the beginning, would I have run or loved her more for her bravery? I don't know if there's a way back from this. Part of me wants to open that letter, hear what she has to say, try to build something real from the ashes of what we had. But another part can't get past the fact that everything was built on a lie, even if it was a necessary one for her survival. My friends are divided. Some say she had no choice, that she was literally fighting for her life, and that true love can overcome anything. Others say lying about your very identity is an impossible foundation for marriage, no matter how noble the reason. I truly don't know what to do. I love the woman I thought she was. I admire the woman she really is. But I don't know if I can trust either of them anymore. Comment. What would you do in this situation? If you like this video, don't forget to like and share so we can bring you more stories like this. Keep an eye out for more stories. Hope you have a good day.